This is a quick overview of division of whole numbers and fractions. So the first thing I want to point out is with fraction word problems. They get really tricky. The first thing you want to ask yourself is, what am I dividing? In these word problems, sometimes you're going to have a whole number first, sometimes you're going to have a fraction first. So figuring this out in the very beginning is going to be super important. So another big thing is the models. With models, there's a lot of different types. We're going to show you all of them today. So sometimes you're going to have a problem like 3 divided by 1/2. And they're going to show you a picture with 3 rectangles. And you can see here, I've got dashed lines dividing them into 1/2 size pieces. So the answer is always going to be the number of 1/2 size pieces. I have 3 candy bars, I cut them in half, and I create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. So the answer to 3 divided by 1/2 is 6. And when I do a whole number divided by a fraction, I'm always going to have a larger whole number for my answer every time. So this is one example of a model. Another example is when they draw circles. This is another model, and I'm going to split them into fourths. So this model represents 4 divided by 1/4, and I create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So I make 16 pieces out of that 1/4. Notice how my answer is a larger whole number. When you start with a whole number, your answer is going to be a larger whole number. This is the number of pieces I get after creating 1/4 size portions. Another model you're going to see is one where they create strip diagrams, and they always start off with these 1-hole strips at the top, and then underneath they usually conveniently have another color. I'm going to split these up into thirds. A lot of times they write 1/3 on each one, so you can see that they're 1/3 size pieces. I'll do it for this example. But this model shows 3 divided by 1/3, and the answer, as you can see, is 9, because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces that I create. So this type of model is always going to use the tiles underneath to show you what it's splitting into. There's one other type of model I'm going to have room for at the end, because it is just a line. Number lines can also be used These represent the whole numbers. I'm going to start off with 3, and then I'm going to split them. And what I've done is exactly this problem here. This shows 3 divided into 1, 2, 3, 1/3 size pieces, and it creates 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces. This problem is exactly the same as the one above it. It's crazy, right? It looks totally different. But I'm doing a whole number divided into a fractional size piece. Notice 9 is bigger than 3 again. The number of pieces I get after I chop this up into all the tiny pieces is way bigger. These are all the models for a whole number divided by a fraction. They can use other shapes, but rectangles, circles, strip diagrams, and line number lines are the most commonly used ones. The next one I'm going to show you is a little trickier. Sometimes we will have a fraction divided by a whole number. So you can see I've started off with a fraction strip here. I've shaded in 1/3. The straight lines, the lines without dashes, the shaded part that it shows you usually is in gray. This is what has to come first. Then they will show you it is cut somehow with dashed lines, and it goes all the way across because it's trying to represent the size of the piece that's left after I split it in half. So if I start with 1/3 and I divide it into 2 pieces, 1, 2, I have 1/3 of a candy bar. I split it into 2 pieces. The size of the piece that I have after I split it in half is my answer. The answer is 1/6 because this is 1/6 of the whole. This is always part of the whole. And you have to look at it as that because this is always going to be a smaller fraction than this. When you compare these two, this is always going to be a smaller fraction because your tiny piece is getting tinier. I'm not going to split 1/3 of a candy bar and end up with 6 candy bars. It's got to be a smaller fraction than what I start with. I'm going to show you one more model. I start with this fraction model shows 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this shows 1/5 shaded. Well, let's say I take my 1/5 size piece and I say I'm going to share it and I'm going to split it into 3 pieces. I have to show the dashed lines. The cuts show what you're dividing it into. If you've ever sewn using a pattern, the cuts are where you cut with your scissors. I cut it into 1, 2, 3 pieces. This is 1/5 divided by 3 right here. My answer is one tiny corner after I split it up. After I do my cutting, this tiny corner here is 1/15 of the whole. That is my answer. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for what it is related to the whole. It's part of the whole. And notice 1/15 is way smaller than 1/5. Now that I've shown you the models, these are fractions divided by whole numbers. Before it was whole number divided by fractions. This is the easy part. When you're dividing fractions, you want to keep, change, flip. I will show you what that looks like. Keep, change, flip. If I do 1/4 divided by 2, first of all, just like we did before when we were multiplying, we got to dress them up like a fraction so you can play with the other fractions. The first one is perfect. I love him. I'm going to put him in a box and I'm going to keep him just the way he is. I don't want to change anything around it. Put a bow on it. It's done. No kid likes division more than multiplication. You hate him, change him. You're going to change the division to multiplication. Then you're going to flip him around so he's upside down. And you're going to rewrite the problem as 1/4 times 1/2. When we do this, we're changing 2/1 to 1/2. This is called the reciprocal. When you flip it to the reciprocal, you can multiply. 1 times 1 is 1. 4 times 2 is 8, and you're done. It's a little bit easier than drawing all the boxes. I'm going to show you one more. When you start with a fraction, you're always going to end up with a smaller fraction. If I have a whole number, like 4 divided by 1/5, I'm going to dress him up like a fraction. I like him. I keep him. Put a bow on him. He's great. You hate him, you change him, you flip him around so he's upside down, and then you take 2 seconds and rewrite it again. Because what happens if you don't rewrite it is you're the kid that does 4 times 1 and 1 times 5. It takes 2 seconds to rewrite this problem the right way, and I'm going to rewrite it 4/1 times 5/1. And when I do that, I get 20/1, and 20 divided by 1 is 20, and I'm done. When I start with a whole number, I end with a bigger whole number. When I start with a fraction, I end with a smaller fraction. You always keep, change, flip, and then you rewrite the problem, and there you have your answer.